an honor to meet you. I really admire where you've come, what you've written. I am a huge fan, so it's a real honor. Ever since Throne of Glass, The Six of Crows, those huge fantasy books came out, I feel that for 5 years there was some kind of void in the fantasy best-selling list until you came.
Thank you.
So
that's a huge honor. Thank you.
But it's really one of the books of the moment. So I wanted to bring that down to you and ask you, what were your expectations when you sat down to write Sobre, because you're here now, you're in Latin America,
Yeah.
but perhaps that's not what you had envisioned when you sat down to write. So
not this. No, I never expected, that I would be in South America. I never expected it to find the audience that it has found. When I sat down to write it, I was just writing it for myself. I had just had my second child, and I was feeling very, sort of like I'd lost my identity as a person, as a woman, and so I had always loved to write. Even as a child, I wrote like poetry, really bad poetry. And short stories and things like that, and I got away from it as I grew up. Favor of more serious pursuits like business, and I have a business degree, marketing specifically, and I worked at a bank, and I got married, and I had kids, and I needed something for me, so I sat down to write Surfin' and Dove at night after my kids went to sleep on Wattpad. I wrote it on Wattpad.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I did a chapter a week for my 5 readers, who I still speak to 2 of them. Wow. Very humble beginnings, very low expectations. It's been surreal. It's hard to believe.
It was a process of starting writing for yourself and sharing it with a bunch of people, and then saying this has to go out there. Did the publishers reach you, or did you?
I reached them. Yeah, no, they didn't come to me. I went to them.
What made you say I have to put this out there beyond Wattpad?
I had written half of a book before, and I didn't finish it. Because it was a mess. So I finished Serpent and Dove, and I was just sitting there at my computer after I clicked, post on that last chapter, and I said, well, what now? I finished a book. I did it. I did what I set out to do. I finished it. I feel like it just can't die in my computer, so that's when I started researching traditional publication. And I learned how that happens. There's so many gates that you have to get through to get a book on the shelf. Like I said, I had very low expectations, but I was like, I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna try, see what happens. All of a sudden had sold, like within 2 weeks. So it was happening, after I signed with my agent, it happened very quickly. So there wasn't a lot of time to wonder what was going to happen with the book. It was just, It was all very unexpected, very whirlwind kind of. And even now, like I said, it doesn't feel real that I'm sitting in Argentina talking about my book. It's very, very, very cool. I'm so grateful to all my readers here.
And when did the story idea come to you? From all the story ideas that you might have in mind, why did you say, I have to write this one? And where did the story come from?
Yeah. It came from Outlander.
Unexpected.
Yeah, I know, Jamie and Claire, in season 2 of Outlander. I was watching it at the end of 2016. And in the second season, they're in France, they're in Paris, and I was like, that's so cool, and so I had to research it.
I was not expecting
basically
that.
Outlander fan fiction.
That's a real good
I mean, when you look at it, it makes sense though, right? Like, Reed's super tall, red hair, like.
Now I see it, yeah.
Yeah.
And why witchcraft? Like, you are called to this environment in France, but what made you say, I love witchcraft? Because that's a very unique thing about your story.
I have always been drawn to witches, and I'm not really sure why, but all of the books that I read as a kid all featured, I think it's just powerful women. It's women in power, and who don't hide their power, even though Lou, in the beginning of the book, is in fact hiding her power. But she learns, she grows to not do that, but it's just, especially in a patriarchal society, there's something that's very attractive about witchcraft.
And what was that research process like the 16th, 17th centuries France witchcraft, because you have your own magic system, but there's also a lot of historical reference in it.
Yes, so the magic system developed in revisions. The clear rules that it had, we didn't always have that, but As far as research, I did a lot of research on like food and like language and such, but it is not historically accurate by any means.
But still, there's a lot of history in it, in the
Witch burning,
part.
yeah.
Yes, and in the religion part, which really caught my attention because we don't have a lot of religion and religious points of views in YA. Like, that's really new. So what drove you to do that? Because
Lou as a character came first. She came before Reed. I knew that I wanted to write a witch, no witch hunter, because I love enemies to lovers. So it just walked into my head, right? So Reed developed second. So I was like, historically, who is the enemy of witches? It's the church.
Yeah.
It's the church. And especially, you know, with the witch hunts in France, you know, and it just folded in so neatly. So, but you're right, there's not a lot of
definitely not.
Like religious. I feel like there's more now. It's always kind of risky because you don't want to offend anyone, and I didn't want to offend anyone either. There were some things from my own past that I needed to unpack, I guess. Just what does it mean to be a woman in a very puritanical, patriarchal society, which the church is.
Indeed.
Well, it historically was, yes.
Yes, and when I was younger, the books I read weren't really like strong female power lead. Strong female characters are quite a recent phenomena, at least here in Argentina, because translations take a while to get here. So, what drove you to write about Lou, about Gogo, especially about second female characters that are also empowering?
Yes, I love that question so much. It's so important to me. Not just the Lou, but like Coco being a character, and not just, you know, like a stock character. Their relationship was so important to me because they're nice to each other. I wanted that representation. That's like where women are uplifting each other, and we are empowering each other, and we love each other, and we love women. Like, that's like a huge theme in the book. And
it was kind of a way to put things about your life out there.
Yes.
And I think, at least I could see it without knowing you, which is something that sometimes happens in literature, that you see that something matters to the author because it's unusual. It's not something we read about in YA in general. It was like, she wrote about religion. She wrote about female empowerment.
I can't hide. No, I didn't hide myself very well in there.
And when did you know you wanted to be a writer? Or did you think you wanted to be a writer because you had this second life? Or you're banging the numbers and things that are usually unrelated?
When I was little, I wanted to be a veterinarian, actually, because I loved animals. I didn't. Like, I've always been such an avid reader. I read all the time. In elementary school, so that the librarian told me that I had to slow down because I was going to read all the books in the library. She actually had that conversation with me, like, you can't check any more books out. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. But yeah, so I didn't know, though. It never even occurred to me that, like, an author was a thing that you could do.
Yeah.
That's not like a career that's presented at like the career fair, you know?
Indeed.
Like where they tell you like you could be an accountant, you could be an astronaut, you could be a doctor, like nobody's like you could be a writer. It was never presented.
Definitely.
I at one point considered journalism. I did. I think I was torn between journalism and English, like as my degrees, and I chose English. And halfway through the semester, of my lovely father, I love him very much. He was very well intentioned. He said, "What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that degree? Do you want to teach?" And I was like, "I don't want to teach." No, I switched to business
Because of not knowing.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I was like, that's a very versatile degree that like, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was 18. Who knows what they want to do at 18, you know? So no, I did not know that I wanted to be a writer for a long time. But like I said, I did come back to it, and then I was like, oh, you know, people can do this. You can have a career that can be a thing that you do.
And what advice would you give to those people who today are young writers or amateur writers and they know they want to publish?
Oh, I love this question. So I have two things that I give, two pieces of advice that I give young writers. And the first is you need to dress for the job you want, which means you need to treat yourself like a writer, like a professional writer. Don't treat it as a hobby.
Yeah.
Because if everyone else is going to treat it as a hobby. I'm not saying you have to write every day, but you need to prioritize your writing. Because if you want to write a book, you have to write a book. You have to finish a book. Like, you can't publish a book unless you first write it. And it's very hard to finish a book. I have so many people who come up to me and they say, like, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, I just don't have time. Nobody has time. You have to make time. Yeah. And then my second piece of advice is to find what you love and, like, lean into it. Don't run from what you love. Like, I love romance, so I'm gonna write romance. Because if you love it, readers can tell.
I take it fantasy is exactly that to you, not only romance.
Mm-hmm.
Can we put fantasy on the list?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Your book came out in, like, soon before the COVID-19 pandemic came out.
Like only like 5
and in
or 6
Argentina, it happened during the pandemic, which I think is a very interesting phenomenon because you have a very new and different and original fantasy book coming here, and for readers surrounded by a very terrible situation, reading turned out to be an escape. Like statistics showed, more people started reading. So Serpent and Dove was to readers here, and I take it in other places of the world, a way to escape from a very terrible situation around them. Was it like that to you while writing it?
Yeah, especially with the first book, because I got to escape into this little magical world every night where, you know, I mean, a lot of terrible things happen in the book too, but it's all fictional, you know, like, I'm in control here, like, I get to decide, I get to make the decisions. First and foremost, I wrote it as escapism, like, as a way for, that's why I like to read.
Yes.
It's to escape.